Awesome. I know this is like late in the evening, and everybody wants to figure out when the day is going to end. But let's make the time with these two amazing gentlemen who built incredible brands worth it. Very delighted to be hosting this panel. Let's take a quick poll in the room first before we get started. How many of you have had tags in some shape or form? Can we have a show of hands? Awesome. So I'd say 60% of the room. How many of you have had like Slay coffee in some shape or form? That's also 70% of the room. So I think one of the best parts of moderating a panel like this is you get to meet the creators of brands that you have consumed, cherished, and loved. And that's when you get like insights which are usually more connectable than any other panel. So what we want to do through the next 25 minutes is A, make this super interactive, but B, primarily decode how they've built digital native brands which have successfully built offline, right? Because it feels like these brands, the digital narrative is only stuck to the e-commerce sort of shopper, but there is more to building a brand, and these folks have been able to crack it with their brands. So as we get started, I think I'd love to start off with Anish and understand how, why do brands not understand completely that offline is going to be the eventual sort of way to also build. Omni-channel is going to be a DNA that you have to build. And how do you break that sort of mindset if that at all is the right narrative?
Great question, of course. But just a quick diversion. For everybody who put up their hands, I've got cookies for you. So, yeah, free cookies for everyone, for everybody who put up their hands. Yeah. That offer was about to come.
We will come to that.
So, Jivraj, I'll just take a step back, right? And see this whole digitally native phenomena, D2C as a phenomena. I think all of this kind of emerged significantly only in the last few years. I think COVID had a large role in terms of getting a lot of heightened enthusiasm around this way of selling. But India has always been a very Dhanda first country. India has always been a offline brands country, right? 15 million retailers is something which you do not hear of in any other country. It has not always been very easy to build offline brands and offline first brands simply because it's possibly not the most capital efficient way of building business, right? Because you possibly need to deploy significantly higher dollars into generating a certain amount of revenue in the offline world, which has not been the case with the digital first brands as such. But then digital first, D2C, etc., the only thing that it does is it limits your market size to a certain extent because there are only those many number of people who are transacting or buying anything online, right? There's a much, much larger market outside of that. So I think depending on which category of products you are selling, what your target group really is, I feel the decision to build a business in a D2C first manner or in an omni-channel first manner completely depends on that. We chose to be omni-channel right from day one because we were always in a category which is extremely impulse-led and basically in a fast-moving category. The idea was to be available in every single place where the consumer is possibly looking for a product like ours. Why a lot of brands possibly are not able to make this transition or journey from being D2C to offline? I think the simple answer to that is every channel requires very different price points, very different product structures, very different channel margins, and potentially in some cases very different kinds of supply chain as well, because you're catering to a very, very different consumption behavior. So I'll pause there.
Got it. No, that's super helpful. While of course it remains contextual, the fact that I'll take away is, you made the decision to go omni-channel from day one. So in terms of team building, in terms of expectation, in terms of mindset, I think that was pretty clear. Coming to you, Chaitanya, I think, I'm sure you've been asked this like a zillion times, but coffee just feels like this, hyper-competitive market, right? Like there is, a lot of players who are doing like, coffee from a very consumption standpoint, which is, let's say, experience-led. They're also doing coffee from, let's say, a product standpoint, which is going to be, at your homes. You, of course, have taken this digital-first approach, yet gone retail as well. and you've built this in a very, very interesting manner in what would stereotypically be considered a crowded market. Talk to us about when you're doing that, right? You may be inclined to be like, we'll acquire a lot of customers online first, then we'll figure out what's next. But you've done something very different. So if you can maybe take us to your mindset, I think that'll be very helpful.
Yeah, so I think just building on, there is an opportunity essentially for any challenger brand as long as you know the white space, the problem you're solving, right? In our case, the insight was very simple. Coffee is a simple pleasure and it has to be affordable, accessible, good quality. So I think we saw the go-to market for being a digital first coffee brand, focusing on essentially outside a physical space as our way of actually testing our broader brand thesis around how do you actually reach more customers who actually are not added to the consumption bracket. So I think we did that almost for the first 3 years entirely. We did almost 150 cloud cafes across the country, and it also forced us to actually build a innovation muscle because we were kind of going and doing that from a product, packaging, price point, menu, everything, right? But to the broader theme, I think a lot of times starting digital first is essentially a way for you to test your hypothesis faster. So it actually will make you more efficient, build your moat, do a lot of experimentation, which can be expensive and sometimes fatal in case of offline. So I think the idea of starting digital kind of worked in our case because it kind of made the brand awareness stronger, built a fundamental innovation muscle for us on the product, which now we are able to translate to our offline. I mean, for us, the brand's tagline is "It's great coffee every day." It has to be affordable for our customers to drink it every day, not like 600 to 800 bucks you do once a month. That essentially is being translated into offline also. So wherein we want our customers to frequent every day. So I think the closing the loop, the idea of start building on your lessons and looking at the white spots and build your innovation muscle, build your moat, and then translating into sort of digital offline and then coming to omni-channel is something that we went through. Now, even in our offline, I was just talking earlier that even in our offline cafes, we stuck to certain things, right? For example, we do only digital payments. We don't take cash at all. And the idea was actually more to do with efficiencies. How do we kind of keep it lean, mean? So a lot of the thesis level that we continue to build, whether we are digital or whether we are doing offline and an omni-channel perspective. So I think that's been sort of our experience.
Got it, got it. That's super helpful, I think, just to understand the progression in which things have evolved. Just to test if the crowd is with us, we'll do another poll, right? How many of you, when you are thinking about chips as a category, think that healthy matters? Can we see a host of hands? How many of you think tasty matters? Awesome. Coming to you, Anish. This has nothing to do with my next question, by the way, so you're going to be disappointed. But TagZ has built a very, very interesting brand at the intersection of this. And they've been very clear that we will do healthy, but we are tasty, right? Like we are going to be consumer first because what people love, ideally, is taste. And then they are thinking about other things which are good to haves. Now, when you're building a brand like that, right, going to these, stores, general trade, where I will also see a Lay's on the stand and I will also see a TagZ, seems like a reasonably tall challenge. However, you've now been able to scale successfully across these multiple thousands of stores across the country. Talk to us about that journey and about the boring parts about that journey as a founder, right? Like, what is this supply chain like? What is the talking to these suppliers like? How do you negotiate with them? What are cash flow cycles like? Just give us all of those trade secrets, if I may.
Chalo, let me start with a very, very boring secret, right? So just before stepping onto the panel, I think the last 3 calls that I got was basically from my finance team because the GST authorities have basically stopped one of our trucks for not having adequate documentation, right? That's the dirty detail of running business in this country, particularly in offline first. Nothing that It's not as if we're doing anything wrong. Maybe our documentation was inadequate and they've been stopped. And as a small company, we possibly do not necessarily have all the wherewithal to be able to navigate through, the tax departments at all points in time, right? And you have to deal with and resolve such issues. But Jivraj, let me come back to the whole healthy, not so healthy, what worked. I think let me just kind of split this into two parts. Okay, I think there are two set of people that we need to gratify, right, while building an omni-channel business. Number one on that list is the consumer, right? Equally important, if not more important, is possibly the retailer who's going to carry my product to the consumer, right? And this reality doesn't exist in the case of most D2C brands, right? Because you reach the consumer directly. Now, the hard way, at least what I have gathered about the Indian consumer by and large, is that there are possibly, for the new upcoming young consuming class of India, there are 3.5 things that matter, right? There are 3.5 things that matter. Number one on that list is affordability. Snacking is very clearly a category where affordability matters above everything else, simply because we do not associate premium with snacking as a category, right? We are willing to pay a premium for expensive alcohol. We are willing to pay a premium for an expensive car. We are willing to pay a premium for expensive innerwear, right? Because you derive prestige out of it. But then snacking is not a category that you associate a premium with. And hence affordability is extremely important. Number two is taste. Affordability gets you into the consideration set. Taste is what drives repeats, right? Number three, have you guys ever noticed that the most popular snacking format today in the country, if you go to the north, is basically the halwai ka dukan, right? Because you get affordable taste and a lot of variety. You come down south, the most popular format is the Udupi restaurant, right? In fact, so much so that India is a country where multi-cuisine restaurants dominate the F&B space. It doesn't happen like this anywhere outside of India. Outside of India, all restaurants will offer a specific cuisine, which means we are a very, very variety-seeking consumer. That's the third most important thing in my view that matters. And I said 3.5 things. The half thing is possibly, is the product better than the really, really bad ones on the shelf, right? So the representation that you guys did here in terms of the number of people who said health matters, I think the moment if I were to step out of this room and walk on Manyata Tech Park's roads, right, people with an average household income of 6 lakhs, I will not find possibly even a single person who will say that health matters, right? So while we are on this journey of building potentially what is going to be the new age premium Haldiram, right, I think these are the 3.5 things that we focus on. Learned it the hard way. For the retailer, I think what really matters is if I'm going to be investing money in this product by putting it in my store, either on cash or on credit, either ways the retailer is investing money. Because even if he's taking it on credit, he's giving you space, right, which is a cost to him. The retailer is very clear, if the product is going to move fast, I will keep it, else I will not. And hence, are you building a brand around the product is exceedingly important, because that will push the product faster, right? What's exceedingly important is that you offer value propositions which are at par with market leaders. So I cannot say that I'm going to launch a 10 rupee pouch and offer lesser grammage than the market leader, right? So when we launched our corn bhujia, we were very clear. We are going to be doing it at 10 bucks. We will launch it at 35 grams. Just that I have to offer a higher margin to the retailer than what a Haldiram or a Bikaji does, right? So for the consumer, the narrative is, hey, I'm giving you corn bhujia, which is significantly better than aloo bhujia. It's a lot crispier, crunchier, etc. It has a fancy brand ambassador called Shikhar Dhawan labeled on top of it. And for the retailer, the narrative is, I'm going to give you better margins. So there are different consideration points that you kind of need to keep in mind, and there are two set of people that you gratify. It's the retailer and the consumer both.
Got it. I think that's super helpful. And that 3.5 formula, I think I'm going to use that someplace else. But very, very impactful. Coming to you, Chaitanya, and I think before that, since we're doing polls to keep the audience up, how many of you prefer coffee at home? Can we have a show of hands? Versus how many of you would prefer coffee as an experience at a retail outlet? Show of hands. We were split in the room. You, of course, have built these amazing retail outlets, and it feels like, in a sea of many, many options to consider, this is an experience that you've been able to curate distinctly well, where I would want to come back again. As a company, how do you, weigh the trade-offs of this capital exposure, maintaining your staff, variable expense, vis-a-vis ensuring that the experience is not broken, standard across all places, and also differentiated while comparing, against, let's say, another retail experience? How do you do these pieces?
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental uh, building block for scalability. We look at, I mean, it's impossible for us to solve everything. We obviously are obsessed about certain core things. We look at, for example, the affordability part, very similar to what Anish was saying, that, good coffee should be a simple pleasure. It should be affordable. Our double shot espresso cappuccinos start from $100. I think you got to give something customer that they feel is of great value, and we do a lot of stuff to make it happen, right? We look at how do we use premium quality ingredients and the entire product experience, without any compromise, but yet giving that value. And we also look at how do we save time and money both for our customers. So everything in terms of the operations is to make sure that we try to basically serve the customers faster. So a lot of these things is still work in progress, by the way. It's not like we've cracked it, but the thesis is build certain foundational elements that will carry us, and that give us the distinctive competitive advantage for us. We don't actually make our cafes premium, super, comfy lounges and all of that, right? I mean, that's not our focus. That's actually sort of the lounge format a lot of other brands do. For us, it's great coffee, gets our customers moving, high in caffeine, low in price points in terms of the affordability, and then, saving their time. And also, we look at, because we have a strong digital layer, I mean, we do get a lot of customer insights. We do our product innovation almost like with the help of our customer insights. So early on, we realized that our customers love strong coffee. So we have a blend called Slayex, which is India's strongest coffee. It's 100% Indian Robusta. So, we actually make sure that we have an overdrive in terms of more caffeine per cup, right? Similarly, we just launched our app where customers can actually pre-schedule their coffee before they walk into the cafe, so that essentially by the time they come in, if they are in a hurry, they could just pick it up and go, right? So again, saving time. So we look at some of these, what we consider to be an ideal customer for us, who actually loves coffee, wants to drink every day, great price, great value, that saves them time and money. That's our segment. So anything that makes them happy, we kind of keep doing that.
Got it. Perfect. Anything to make the customer happy. That's the takeaway. We probably running a bit short of time, so we'll go on to concludatory aspects. I think the final question, I'll come to Anish first again. One of that is, I'm generalizing here on purpose, which is to say that most people in this room, including myself, are probably from like an evolved consumer mindset, something that you touched upon as well, right? But there are a lot of these insights that are required to scale to the mass India, right? Which is to say that, when you're building a sustainable, large business in Bharat, there are a lot of these counterintuitive insights that come by scaling to that audience set. Talk to us about some of the things that help in company building when you're scaling to tier 2 and beyond. What are some non-intuitive things that we will find insightful? And how do you then incorporate that within the team as a DNA if they are not as close to the ground? Because again, you're not getting direct feedback, right? You're getting indirect feedback in offline. So how do you do that piece?
So I travel almost 15, 16 days a month. On an average, in the last 4 months, I would have possibly covered 9 to 10 cities every month. One thing that I've gathered while traveling across the length of the breadth of the country is that we are culturally diverse. Our tastes vary, particularly when it comes to food. Of course, personal care, etc. In a lot of these categories as well, the tastes vary a lot. But there is one common thread which actually binds us from literally Kashmir to Tirupati, because that's been the scope of my travel. There's one thing that really, really binds us. Across the whole of India, we are a deeply value-seeking consumer, right? Whatever report might say that, there is this 5x jump in people who are earning 5 lakhs and more, the fact remains that even though as a country, people might be making more money, but what they choose to spend it on, there is a very, very deeply value driven mindset at play, right? This is something that I gathered largely through interacting with consumers, customers, which is retailers and distributors. And I think unless you actually spend time in these markets, it's extremely difficult to gather these insights. I was just telling somebody the other day that, I spent some time in Bihar. I traveled to Patna and I traveled to Muzaffarpur. And मुझे ऐसा लगा मैं बस 1990s में चला गया हूँ वापस. मतलब लोगों के हाथ में एक मोबाइल फोन है, राइट? एंड आई थिंक दैट्स द ओनली थिंग विच हैज रियली चेंज्ड. बट मुझे ऐसा लगा कि मैं 1990s में हूं. अब दिमाग तो ऐसे काम करता है कि अच्छा अगर ये प्रोडक्ट मुझे पसंद आ रहा है ना, ये मैं नहीं बनाऊंगा, राइट? So Jivraj, tomorrow if you were to tell me that you really, really like my product, it doesn't matter to me at all, right? Because possibly you are a very, very different consumer. I'm a very different consumer. Our preferences are very different. But then India as a market, if I want to potentially build 1,000 crore or 5,000 crore company, right, the consuming class behaves very differently. And while, the quick commerce companies, while the food delivery companies might boast of millions of MAUs or DAUs, I think what stays common across those millions of MAUs and DAUs is the fact that people are coming because essentially they perceive that there's a discount that is on offer, right? So there is no other way to kind of gather these insights while you are possibly building an offline business. It is more to do with how much time you're really spending closer to the customer. I've been doing sales and distribution for the last 20 years of my life. And मुझे लगा था अच्छा मे बी आज तो distributors को Bangkok trip का उतना enthuse नहीं होता होगा. But here I am sitting down for a dinner, Wazwan dinner with my distributors in Kashmir, and all of them have traveled from Gulmarg, Anantnag, Pahalgam, Sopore kind of places, Srinagar. They be having dinner, and they're like, sir, Bangkok trip का कोई incentive क्यों नहीं launch करते? So we came back and we did that, right? But fact remains that is India.
No, that's awesome. I think that's very, very important. I'll just re-emphasize on that point. I've had the pleasure of hosting some incredible founders, and the thing that really stands out is you can never be restricted by your own experiences, which is why consumer insights as a phenomena is just such an emphasizing factor for every founder there is. And I think that's very, very crucial to mention. And I think this is the perfect personification of a founder who is close to the ground, is listening to their consumers, building an offline business, scaling across India, and doing the hard yards, literally, to build it happen and make it happen. So lovely. Coming to you, Chaitanya, for perhaps the last question before our final sort of rapid fire segment. I will perhaps again, take the liberty of stereotyping, but let's say, we're talking about this average Indian consumer who has, let's say, is in a tea-loving nation or a tea-consuming nation, has definitely multiple options for, let's say, coffee on the go. How do you ensure that the repeat retention, we're also at a conference that is celebrating retention, how do you ensure that, they are coming back to you again and again without having to compromise business fundamentals, which is to say that you can't heavily discount, you can't heavily do things that are not sustainable. So how do you sustainably create a retention pool for a audience or customer which is, let's say, spoiled, for the lack of a better word, especially in a category like yours?
Yeah, so you have to play it by different playbook. That's the simple answer of it. We don't give too much discounts. Our average discounts is 5 to 6%, just to kind of keep something for the customer. We don't do too much of. Actually, we don't do any performance marketing. We don't do any marketplace marketing. It's primarily organic. I think we go back to the core insight of what's the segment that we are catering to and why they want to come back to the brand, and are we doing it better every day compared to the previous day. And to a large extent, I think the opportunity for Indian consumer markets is largely in the new segment of customers we're going to add. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that. By bringing new products, new solutions, new services, that expands the access because of affordability, right? Look, I think there are some 1,000 branded cafe chains across the country, top 10, 15, 20 cities, which is basically meant for the top 2-3 percentile of the households. I mean, we are essentially, I don't call to make it cheesy that we're building for the Bharat or anything, but we do see that coffee, India mein sab log chai peete hain, is also, like I still drink my morning coffee, I drink my afternoon chai, right? People increasingly are looking at consumption is a way of living life. I mean, drinking good coffee is basically a way of living good life. We're just making it more accessible, more pleasurable, and in that process, we have to innovate. I think the key question here is: are we innovating and are we bringing things that customers actually are loving and they don't find it elsewhere? I think that's really the long, short answer of it. And we do find it at times very exciting and at times very daunting also, because you have to keep at it. Either it's a new flavor you want to put on the menu, to a new kind of copy you want to tell why what we are doing, a cup of slay is better than somebody else. It kind of cuts across everything in the middle, right? But I think my last thought here is that you got to be absolutely clear about the customer you're serving, and the muscle, the innovation, the foundations on which you actually bring that expertise that matches that. So I think that's sort of for consumer brands, it's extremely critical to have that deep insight and deep commitment towards that. I think that's going to be the reason for success in the long term.
Lovely, lovely. I think that's super helpful. This has been super nice. What we'll do next is, very quickly, we have these set of very interesting questions as a rapid fire that we'll close down with, and we'll put these two gentlemen on the spot now. But very quick questions. We'll just please answer what first comes to mind. But the first question there is, Anish, what was the last unhealthy thing that you really, really consumed?
I consume unhealthy stuff almost every day because I have to try out what's out there in the market. मैंने कल fried potato chips खाया है. Came
Okay.
across this very interesting brand which is doing stuff in very interesting packaging. I, in fact, also had some very sugary cookies, right? Because this is from a local bakery. So there's no way to
Things
avoid it.
founders do to test markets. For you, it'll be, which is your favorite tea brand?
In Bangalore, it's Chai Point, just because it's everywhere.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. If I had to ask you what was the worst advice you got for your founder journey, what would that be?
Can I offer you a cookie instead of an answer? Because that's a tough question.
We'll take the
Th-
cookies
there's
off.
there's obviously a lot of bad advice that I've received, hence made it a point that I will never offer advice. But I think the worst advice that I can think of is, don't do this, because no VC will ever invest in this.
Got it. Perfect.
Actually, a lot of them. Very difficult to. I'm not trying to, put that in a hierarchy. But look, somebody questioning, your core passion to do something because of, either a certain market trend or a certain kind of returns. I think that's really what if an entrepreneur and anybody who is in the business of building need to be careful about. It's not just investors. I think you just have to back yourself. So I think that's important.
Awesome. So basically, don't do things for external reasons. Do them for internal reasons. If you both could pick one brand which is already out there and be the CEO, founder of that instead, new age brand, consumer, what would that be?
India or outside?
India. India. Hopefully, one of the ones that we'll also know. Yes. Maybe you can start.
I think in broader consumer space, I mean, I love what's happening in media. If I have to pick, Indian homegrown media companies, there are a few, and within food, actually, if I see, I think it's very hard to pinpoint a brand name. But
Nobody's picking one. Nobody's being.
So I'll tell you something very interesting. This is actually a very old brand,
Okay.
and I came across this at one of my distributor points in Hyderabad. I think people above 30 will possibly have heard of this brand. It's called Fatafat.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was like, in the spur of the moment, I actually asked somebody to help me reach out to who's still running the brand. Is there some way we can take the brand name and the products and be able to sell it? I think a lot of products like this died a natural death somewhere, but I think the market is right today. And yeah, I think for me, that'll be one brand, Fatafat. I think it'll have a tremendous market today in India.
Awesome. And perhaps a stereotypical end, but if you had to leave us with this one line, right? Like, for aspiring founders, operators, building and scaling offline, what would that be? Very succinctly.
For anybody building offline, number one thing is offline is not equal to modern trade, right? Modern trade, we still don't do modern trade, by the way. We will possibly not attempt national modern trade for a very long time, right? It's the least capital efficient way of building a brand, building a business. Look at channels where your capital rotation can be faster. Look at channels where you can get your product placed by paying a better margin rather than paying a listing fee, right? Focus on doing it the most capital efficient way, as much as offline can be done. Contrary to what any Silicon Valley playbook will tell you, you need not necessarily have a lot of smart people. You need a lot of execution-oriented people. You do not necessarily need to hire people who come with a fresh mindset. You need to have people in the team who've been there, done that, because offline is a very relationship-driven game. So I think those will be the 2 or 3 points.
I think I'm going to summarize. Just chase cash. Cash basically is, what you need to be very mindful is cash. No other metric matters. Just to, I think, summarize, Anish.
Absolutely.
The other thing is a lot of things that seem obvious in offline, they're not obvious. I think you got to actually, for your category, for your brand, unless you do something that is not obvious, you're not going to be successful. So I think don't just think that you're doing all the obvious and you're going to be successful. You got to do that's necessary, that may not be sufficient. So I think try to figure something that's not obvious, that's going to make you win.
Awesome.
And last but not the least, just because your product is doing well on your website, don't launch it at the same price, same grammage in the offline space. 99 rupees ka chewing gum offline mein nahi bikega.
Lovely. No, this has been great. Thank you so much, both of you, for amazing
And if you have 99
insights.
rupees, you should try a Slay cappuccino.
Yes. So whoever did not raise their hands in their first poll, I'm guessing you're going to all try the brands now. But this has been lovely. Thank you so much for your insights. Can we have a huge round of applause for the panelists? Thank you for being a great audience.
WebEngage. Retention simplified.